All right, we're here with Oriel Eisner and Scout Bratt from the Center for Jewish Nonviolence, or CJNV. The Center for Jewish Nonviolence brings Jewish activists together to resist the Israeli occupation through nonviolent direct action and sustain solidarity with Palestinian communities. Oriel, how do you introduce and connect Jewish activists to this work?
So a lot of the folks who come into our work, join our delegations, are already pretty active on this issue. So people who are already engaged in different organizing work in the US, Canada, most Europe are mostly where folks come from. And then we sort of provide the bridge for them to connect to what's happening on the ground, to engage in nonviolent resistance work on the ground alongside Palestinian and Israeli activists, and plug in that way. So I think, maybe more so than introducing folks to the issue, I think people are already on board with being active against the occupation. What we provide is an opportunity to root that in the on the ground realities and communities who are dealing with this every day.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So do you want to tell us, maybe we'll go to Scout on this one, what your work is like on the ground in Israel, Palestine? What does that activism look like, and how do you work and show solidarity with the Palestinian community?
Thanks for this question. It looks a lot of different ways. We were first started because our founder, Alana Sumka, was in communication with a Palestinian family and a leader, Daoud Nasser, who has a farm, a family farm, and area where they had a number of trees destroyed by the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, the army, in 2015, and it was in 2014. It was in response to that destruction that Alana asked that individual, Daoud Nasser, what could we do to support you? And he said the most radical, supportive thing would be to have Jewish activists come and replant those trees, which were a source of livelihood, a source of meaning and connection to the land that he and his family had. And it's from that framework that we have built ongoing programming, both delegations that last anywhere from 9 to 10 days to a 3-month stint of sustained solidarity called Hinenu, wherein we are working and living in Palestinian villages with our Palestinian community partners, engaging in nonviolent direct action on a regular basis, engaging in existence as resistance work that is ultimately guided by and led by Palestinian leaders.
So that all sounds like a really cool and sort of like broad, deep set of programs. What sort of impact have you all had on the communities in which you work?
Good question. I think at our best, the either delegations or Hinenu provide a boost of energy and support to local communities. So as Scott was saying, we're always following the leadership of Palestinian community leaders and activists. And when delegations are doing their best, when Hinenu is at its best, we're supporting them in their resistance efforts. So bringing bodies to show up in projects and in direct action, bringing Jewish privilege that we can leverage in material ways on the ground in terms of making things possible and accessible that maybe wouldn't be otherwise, but also bring like attention because we are Jews from abroad who are coming in and doing this work. And I think that historically we've seen that play out in terms of like actions that delegations catalyze because there's a large group of international Jews coming in. We're able to sit with our partners and imagine something bigger than would maybe happen in a day-to-day kind of way. With Hinenu also, when folks are here for 3 months, we're able to show up and accompany shepherds, accompany kids on their way to school, and that in real time solidarity work is important, but then also we can document and broadcast that out to international communities and audiences to make sure that the daily violence of the occupation doesn't pass quietly.
So what are some of the most powerful moments you've experienced out there? I get the feeling, I was reading the proposal you all sent as I was preparing for this interview, and really from some of those quotes that some of your activists had, it sounds like some of the most impactful moments in this work can also be pretty scary.
Yeah, totally. I think one thing that comes to mind that maybe illustrates my last point is in May of 2019, we planned an action together with our partners to restore a access road that was used by a number of different Palestinian villages in a pretty remote area of the West Bank. And that road is right next to a settlement, and the settlers often would block it, and the road was in pretty significant disrepair. So we brought, in coalition with local activists, Palestinian and Israeli, a large group to come in and restore that road. And the army pretty quickly came and tried to stop that effort, and ended up arresting 17 of us. 5 Palestinians, 5 internationals, and 7 Israelis were arrested altogether. And what was really powerful and moving about that was, I think, the way that the sort of joint resistance and solidarity of that moment really came through in terms of like shared branding, shared messaging, shared sense of purpose, but also in being arrested. We were all released that same day. And actually the Palestinian activists were released before the Jewish activists, which I think is a testament to that, what that privilege can unlock. Most of the Palestinians were expecting to be in jail at least overnight, if not for a few nights. And then when they were home for dinner that night, it was pretty extraordinary and pretty remarkable to see that was something, yeah, our standing together across our different positionalities could make possible.
It's really beautiful, and I think the kind of thing that, we all, dream of wanting to be more possible out there in the Middle East. But one thing that's cool about CJNV is that not only do you focus on activism in Israel-Palestine, but your organization also serves to connect, educate, and train Jewish organizers. I think it's great that that work focuses not only on activism, but on that development.
Yeah,
So,
we agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can share more about that.
Please, yeah.
I think when we consider what our theory of change is and what it means to be a part of a movement landscape of many different organizations that are led by collaborative groups, by organizations that are working across lots of different geographic areas, some that are very much specific to one chapter or to one state in our country, one location. Sorry, I'm messing this up a little bit. We're recording. Okay, cool. I think what we're focused on ultimately is knowing that people are connected in their home communities, wherever they are located, to organizing efforts. So as Oriel mentioned before, a lot of folks who join us on the ground have had experience in doing anti-occupation organizing, have had experiences being involved in Jewish solidarity efforts. However, they may not have had lived embodied experiences of solidarity work on the ground with Palestinian leaders. And so when we think about supporting individuals and coming onto the ground with us, building relationships of solidarity with our Palestinian partners, it is in order for those relationships and the lived experiences of our Palestinian partners to be woven into and prioritized back in home communities. So whether someone's a member of Jewish Voice for Peace or J Street U, or if not now, through their experience on the ground in a delegation, they're able to potentially uplift and center Palestinian experiences, voices, leadership, history of nonviolent direct action and nonviolence organizing as well in whatever work they're doing. So it's part of our work to talk with organizations like, if not now, J Street U, Jewish Voice for Peace, IJV Canada, about the work that they're doing and how it could be strategic to have leaders come onto the delegation with us to then inform future work they are doing already in their home communities.
So for, I know you've mentioned nonviolent direct action a few times today. For those who don't know briefly, what is nonviolent direct action? Can you tell us more about the impact your organizers have had in the Middle East and beyond? Like, it sounds to me like they've gone to play some pretty essential roles in US-based movements too.
Yeah, good question. I think for me, maybe for us, when I think about what nonviolent direct action is, what our brand of nonviolence is it's really about the embodied resistance work. And I think in the context of Israel-Palestine, especially occupied West Bank, yeah, a situation where like every day the occupation is trying to push Palestinians off their land. So the resistance to that is really material, and really about like bodies holding space, and specifically Palestinian bodies and communities holding space and holding on to their land. So I think in its like maybe most sort of traditional sense, the NVDA is when we sort of push on the levers of what's legal, like civil disobedience, breaking the law that is unjust, to sort of point out how problematic that law is, and try and make sort of a new reality possible in that moment, and also I think prefiguratively in terms of signaling what a world could look like that didn't have those unjust laws. But I think particularly in the Palestinian context, one thing that I feel like I've learned a lot from our partners, and that has become true of our work because it's led by Palestinian communities, is that every single day is an act of resistance. Like if the system is trying to push you off your land, every single day you stay in your land, every single day you go out to your fields, you take your sheep to graze on the hillsides, is resisting the occupation. And we're through the delegations in Hinenu able to step in and be a part of that. So I think it's really about embodied practice, embodied action, and I think that connects to the sort of pieces that Scout was mentioning in terms of the impact not only on the ground but also beyond. Like I think by having that sort of embodied experience, standing alongside Palestinians on the ground, folks are impacted, are transformed, and then bring that into their work back home. So we've seen, in the organization Scout mentioned, like leaders come on delegations and then go home and bring that work directly into what they're doing back home, and also into movement spaces that aren't necessarily about Israel-Palestine. Folks who are connected to things like Never Again, like immigrant justice work, racial justice work in the US, the lessons of embodied practice with Palestinians and Israel-Palestine informing how they show up in that work back home.
And if I can add, I would also just say that that's a part of what I think is a larger effort to ensure that we are truly embodying a Judaism of solidarity. Is what does it mean for us to have experiences, strategically using our bodies on the ground, thinking about what is the embodied processing of resistive relationships, of what it means to have our cultural identities, religious identities, histories weaponized. What does it mean to feel that in our bodies, and then to think really critically about how we build alternatives? It, to us, has to do with a really embodied approach to movement building.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that. Really cool to hear both about how catalyzing your work is. Shout out Never Again, also JLF grantee, and kind of about that theory behind what makes the work you all do so powerful. So just to talk about what we've been able to do since receiving a JLF grant. CJNV along with Ahvad Amin was one of the first organizations JLF funded whose activism is focused on change in the Middle East. What has this funding enabled you all to take on?
Yes, thank you so much for your support. And ultimately, it's an honor also to be amongst Ahvad Amin as a grantee. Really an honor to have an organization like that we also work closely with on the ground, and have a lot of alum who have been a part of CJNV on the ground delegations, Hinenu. Really, your support has helped us sustain our newest project, Hinenu. And this time around, with your support, we increased the number of people who are participating in this 3-month solidarity stay. And not only were we able to do that in terms of supporting people in being in Palestinian communities, it's by actually investing in Palestinian communities we're working with. So we are paying for rent, we are paying for food, we're paying for supplies, and supporting supply work, or supporting work that's happening on the ground that is ultimately existence as resistance community work that is again done through the leadership and guidance of Palestinian partners. And that's possible because of your support.
Awesome. It's so great to hear that you all are able to do so much Awesome stuff. And honestly, it's an honor for us to be able to say that we helped in your awesome work. So if someone is looking to follow along or get involved with said awesome work, where can they find you all?
They can find us on the ground if they want to come on a delegation or hinenu. But first, you can absolutely visit our website, cjnv.org. You can find us on Instagram at CJNVgram. We're also on Facebook. We're also on Twitter at CJNV Tweets. And I would say visiting some of our social media is one of the first ways to get familiar with how we are trying to amplify the already existing media that is built by or produced by Palestinians. So the journalism by our Palestinian partners that shows visions of, dreams of a future of Palestinian liberation, and also the realities of everyday life under occupation. We'll feature that on our social media. Please check it out. It's a huge component of how we try to ensure that our experiences doing sustained solidarity are spread beyond just those villages and that experience on the ground.
Amazing. Thanks so much, everyone. Appreciate you.